So you own a SaaS company. You want to increase the number of users coming to the site, and this video is hopefully going to help with that. We're going to be looking at HubSpot. We're going to look at their website and do a UI and UX breakdown for us to figure out how they manage to attract so many users. We're going to look at the homepage, some of their internal pages, and even the pricing page, and try and give you some actions you can take away and add into your own SaaS business. So let's get involved. So let's start with the homepage. So if we look at what's going on here, actually the overall site is really easy to digest the information. It's very clear what we should be reading to start with, grow better with HubSpot. Quite an interesting title to start with. And we've obviously got a reference with a smaller title to make it clear what it is. And there's a little bit of information here. You'll see from a kind of contrast point of view that our eyes are very much drawn to this getting a demo. And we've got a little bit of padding and space all around this to make it really clear what we should be interacting with. Right near the top of the page, they're doing a lot of credibility building here. They're referencing the number of users they've got. They're referencing the number of different countries that they have. So both of these are great ways to build credibility. They're also referencing some of the really well-known companies. Of course, not all of us have these, so we can't put them always in. But I would always say if you have any customers, even if they're just ones that are relevant to show the sort of industries that you work in, we should always be featuring them. You can cycle through those as well. So lots of credibility building as we go. Now, in theory, one of the big questions that the user might have as they start to scroll down the page is, well, what is HubSpot? What can it actually do for me? So I think it's quite clever that one of the first things you see straight away is a nice video that can automatically explain in a little bit of simple information exactly what they're doing. As we go down, they're then breaking down the different kind of parts to it. So you've got Marketing Hub, Sales Hub, Service Hub, etc. There's some basic information here that's kind of showing the fact, from a visual representation that the data going in can go through all of these systems and then come out the other side. And then if you are interested, what we're doing here is we are signposting the user to look at different pieces of information. So do we want to signpost and push the user to look at Marketing, Sales Hub, or Service Hub as an example? I think what they're doing really well here is they're just highlighting the main features of what you might be interested in as a user. So actually, are you after lead generation or are you after data sync further down? I'm not sure, so let me have a quick look at each one. It's a really nice way of doing it. We're also highlighting other information here. So enrich your contact component with some extra information here via Clearbit. As I've mentioned in a couple of my other videos, if you're not quite to the point where you are ready to buy, you're going to read a lot of information on the website. So your homepage should really signpost the user to these different locations. So that's what we're starting to do here, which works really well. We've also got this blog information down here, so you can learn more about these different bits of information or any new features that they've got. If we're still on the homepage and we're still building credibility, which is quite nice, we're talking about the fact that HubSpot's got 11 million visitors coming to it all the time. Nearly 500,000 people have gone through their academy systems. These are all big credibility builders. And we've also got all their awards that they've won over the years. So overall, a really, really nice homepage. Now, there are a couple of interesting things that I do want to draw attention to. And one of the things that when we're designing, we want to make sure that there's a really nice contrast between the things that we want the user to interact with, which we refer to as CTAs or call to actions. We want these buttons to really stand out, so it's very clear what we want the user to interact with. Now, in theory, the orange does do this. There is a high contrast between this orange and everything else. But one thing to just reference here is we're using a lot of orange on the website already. Orange buttons here, orange lines, orange icons, orange throughout. So actually, one kind of point I was going to make was that maybe we need to introduce a new color so that it's very clear which elements we want the user to interact with, and whether that is changing the button color or whether these icons should be changed so that the orange only stands out for the thing we want to interact with. And by chance, I'd not actually realized this when I came to do the video, but they have this high contrast option up here. So it's clearly something that they are testing at the moment. So if I click this high contrast in, you'll see that the buttons I interact with then become blue, and they actually do stand out more. There's a much higher contrast overall because we've still got these nice branded orange elements, but it's very clear now these stand out a lot better. So interesting to see that they've run this as a separate high contrast button, almost like a toggle that you can trial. So it'd be interesting to see if maybe that contrast on your own website just doesn't stand out enough. And this is sometimes some of the worries, right? That we want to make the site look incredibly aesthetic and beautiful. But if we're not really highlighting the thing we want the user to interact with, we could be losing sales. That's definitely something that we should be considering. Now, before we skip past the main menu, I want to really focus on that as well. I'm going to keep the site in this high contrast. I do quite like it. But you'll see here that it's very clear what we're going to with these different elements. Everything is sectioned out, very easy to understand. And again, you'll see kind of copies what's further down the page on the home page already. We're clearly signposting the user that we want to push them into one of these individual elements to maybe to look at the marketing in more detail. You'll also see they do have a free system, and although that is top of the page from a hierarchy point of view, so it is very clear to the user, there's obviously more real estate given to these options to try push the user into some of those, which is quite a nice way of doing it. You also see just from a resources point of view, this obviously doesn't look quite as nice. It's almost purposely done so that our attention is being drawn to some of those software pages instead, but does work really nicely. The other thing that we're really highlighting here is this is a purchasing page. Pricing is a purchasing page. Resource, although not necessarily straight away a purchasing page, it's definitely going to be part of the buying journey. So we're clearly highlighting these individual elements out. We then grouped these right-hand items with, getting a demo or get started over here. So we've got clear options. Now the About Us is clearly still fairly important, but it's not as important, especially to the buying journey as those. So they've hidden these away a little bit smaller. I think that's really smart of them. We all just presume that the main menu should have all of our options in here, and it can actually be quite overbearing. So maybe think about how you're breaking down your menu as a way to increase the likelihood of them clicking and interacting with the elements that we really want them to click. So let's pretend we've now clicked into one of these options, and I'm going to look at the Marketing Hub. And again, I think really clever little nuances they've added into the site. First off, I'm just going to close that. All they've got right at the top of the page is these little accordion options. So accordions are, as you click them, they open up with additional information. It means a couple of things that are then happening here is it doesn't take up too much visual space. If the user is interested in them, they can click them, they can read some basic key information before they go anywhere else. And the other really nice thing is these are obviously trackable, so we can see which ones the user is really wanting to interact with and clicking open. So that's a really nice option. And I think just giving some basic pricing information in here is genius, right? I don't have to go to a different page. I can see some basic starting points just to know if I can afford it, essentially, before I bother to scroll down the rest of the page. So that's really nice. Again, we're making it very clear by building credibility with our different options, and we're running with this video theme. And even little talking head videos like this could be a really nice way just to showcase your SaaS product in a little bit more detail. So they've got that there. If they've not interacted with that, let's start to pull out some of the main features. So did you know we have forms? Did you know we have live chat? Did you know we have Salesforce integration? We can click into all of these to read a little bit more. We then start to go a little bit more benefits driven. So do you want to save time and resources with some basic information that really overviews it? And I like the way we're separating all of these individual chunks out. Everything is very digestible, it's very clean, it's very simple to read, it's very clear what I can interact with as well. We then get further down here, and we're very clear on this is the free option, this is what's included, these are what you're included from everything else as you move up. And we also have, additional things like, did you know you get your education? Do you know it's 24/7 customer support? All of these additional just tick lists are in people's heads. People have this shopping list, right, of items that they want to make sure are included in their SaaS products before they buy them. And there's always going to be a fairly long educational piece before they buy. So we need to make sure we're ticking off all of these items as we go. I also think the overall university style is quite nice. Always making use of other people's logos to build credibility. Really highlighting out some two key things, right? Like this was the challenge and this is how our product solved that challenge. I think that's a really nice way of doing it. And you can also click between these and then see more information. So overall, really nicely done. Now, for anyone who has used HubSpot, they will know that the HubSpot pricing is not one of their strongest points, right? It's a little bit confusing because they have so many different products, so many different options, so many different variables that end up getting pulled in. It can be really, really confusing for the user. There's a couple of nice things that they are trying to reference here, and I think it's worth at least, even if it is a slightly longer, more convoluted journey, that I think they've done a fairly good job of trying to explain this. So first off, Clearly for them, overall large business and enterprises are more important. We automatically default to this option, but we can click into a smaller tab over here. So that's one thing to reference. And actually, even some large businesses I know are probably better suited to this smaller option, but it's interesting to see that they're really trying to funnel people to this place to start with. You'll see here as we scroll down that they are highlighting some of their key information, and I think this is a nice way of doing it as well, where you can compare two different options and we can click on compare further down. We'll come back to that in a minute. As we cycle down, and I've done this in other videos where we've discussed this, but we're referencing the difference between the features, and you can also click them open to see them all in detail. It's really easy to read. They put squares around everything, so it's very easy to read across. On one of my other videos, I referenced the fact that sometimes what people do is they make them look incredibly aesthetical, but then they don't include any of these lines, so it's quite hard to actually read across and figure out these different points. But at least we're covering for all of those. And they do have some individual tooltips on here to highlight some of these elements as well. So again, some of these work really, really nicely. The reason they'd hidden most of this information before is obviously the differences on them is quite large. So I think that it was probably a good idea to start with it a little bit smaller. If we are on the pricing page, then this is obviously going to be a far more likely page where someone can purchase from. So we really do want to hammer home some of these other options. So reminding them of what it can link in with, reminding them of the credibility, reminding them of the case studies is a really nice way of doing it. And if you get this far down and we've not purchased yet, then maybe they have some FAQ or maybe some more detailed questions that we might need to answer. You'll also see at all times they always have this open so that people can interact with it and ask questions there and then. So they clearly know that's quite a key one. Now, again, not everyone can be managing that at all times, but it's nice to see that we at least have that as an option for us to run with. As we get down, again, if you get all the way to the bottom, you're not quite ready to sign up, at least they are giving a phone number. I wouldn't necessarily have the phone number splattered everywhere because we really want just the user to sign up, but it's nice to have that fallback. As we click over into these individual options, they're very clear with what's best option here. Best option is to pay up front. It says best value and then you commit annually. Whereas this one is just more your commit monthly. Obviously, from their point of view, they want you to commit to an entire year because then you can't go anywhere. Obviously, for most of the people, most normal people would probably want to just pay monthly, and that's completely fine. But at least we've got those and we can start to buy now. Interestingly, these internal pages, we've actually got the high contrast removed. So I can't change this to high contrast anymore. Interesting to see, but yeah, we've got one of those. If we also then click on these compare options, I can hit compare and I get some detail on here for me to run through those a little bit. So we're just trying to allow the user to, I guess, make their own decisions, right? We're trying to be really clear to say, here's absolutely everything about us. We're not hiding the information away, which a lot of other companies might do. We're being crystal clear with all of our options and letting the user decide on what's best for them. Educating them as much as we can on the features and what's included, and then we can progress from there. Now we've got lots of lovely actionable items that we can take from looking at the SaaS page for HubSpot. There's lots of definite learnings that we can take, and they really like the high contrast, but there's a huge breakdown of different points that we can be doing. Are we making sure the information is digestible? Are we making sure there's a decent contrast between different elements? Are we splitting out our homepage so we're really signposting the user and getting to navigate through the site? The menu should also do that. Are we making it super clear which elements are going to be useful? If you do have a lot of pricing options, a bit like HubSpot does, really consider the design of that page. Are we separating everything out? And are we allowing the user to make those decisions themselves? If you want to watch more of my videos, you can check out one of them just here to have a look at in your own time. And if you've got any ideas of other sites you'd like me to do a little bit of a breakdown of, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much. Bye.